surprise to me because I wasn't expecting to go first. You know, I think, as you know, I would like to talk about the perspective that we've been talking about and discussing and organizing around for over a year. But I think first it's important for us to revisit a founding principle of the party as I understand it. And that is our understanding of the national question and the importance of it and how it is central to the work that we do in this country. If you look around in this country, if you look at the people who continue to suffer the effects of Hurricane Sandy, and a lot of the suffering is general, but those who suffer and will continue to suffer the lingering effects are those who are the most dispossessed and oppressed within society. And all you really have to do is go to the Rockaways or go to Red Hook and you can see that. It would be a mistake for us to say that all things are equal and we've achieved equality in this society, and that workers in this country, the oppression and the repression that they face is equal, because it is not. That would be to erase the entire experience of oppressed people in this country. Some mistakes are unforgivable and unforgettable. We don't make that mistake. And that is why I find myself a member of Workers' World Party. I wouldn't be with any other organization. So as we talk about the perspective and the importance of people's power, if we look at the last few years in this country, if we go back to 2000, if we go back to 2006, with the most recent and most dynamic general strike that this country has ever seen, and that is when immigrant workers went out unafraid and they shut the entire country down. And if you go back and you look at the uprising in response to the mass incarceration of people of color, particularly black people, that rose up because of what was happening with the case of the Gen 6 in Louisiana. And what happened when the young brother Trayvon Martin was shot down and the person was out on the streets free to walk around for over 40 days, and the response of people to that event. Hundreds of thousands of people around the country took to the streets, and it wasn't just this particular case. This case was a catalyst to this mass explosion. The event of the siege and takeover of the Wisconsin State House. Occupy Wall Street and how it awoke this sleeping giant, and it actually pointed the finger right to Wall Street and to the ruling class in this country, and it threw off the shroud and it said, yes, we do know who you are, and we will go to where you don't expect us to go, where we will make you feel the most uncomfortable. So they took the struggle right down to Wall Street, and they pointed the finger at capitalism as the fundamental problem of world society, of the global society. These events are a response to what has grown to be decadent U.S. imperialism, Western world imperialism. It's a response to imperialism at this stage of development, of finding itself in a very profound and intractable crisis of the capitalist system. Just as the events of the general strikes in Europe are a response to that. So you see, some people have been, unfortunately, because we don't have the wide reach that the capitalist media have, and so they've been able to create this idea in people's mind that everything, the worst of it, is over now, and that things are going back to normal. Wall Street is profitable again, and you don't have to worry. And every day they're faced with the news that things have in fact not gone back to normal, and the worst has yet to come. And if you look at what the estimates, every quarter they have estimates of global growth, and they have to always, every year they project what the growth will be on a worldwide scale and in imperialist centers, and they have to come back and they have to bring, they have to scale it down a little bit. So they're looking at almost 0% growth going into next year. I think it's 0.2% growth. And I'm sure that they're going to revisit that. And that's simply because the system has outgrown the planet. And unless they find new reserves of human capital somewhere else, they're not going to be able to go back to their glory days. War does not, it used to be that one of the reasons that the U.S. and the Western world was able to come out of the Great Depression is partly because of the war, the destruction of Europe, the Marshall Plan, and the occupation of Japan, and they were able to bring themselves out of the conditions of the Depression because of that. But that isn't so anymore. If you just look at the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, the weapon systems that they create aren't so much labor intensive. It can't bring them out of their crisis. So what must we do with these facts of history? How can we build on the Occupy Wall Street movement? How can we build on the siege of the Capitol in Wisconsin? How can we begin to embolden and push the working class forward facing the austerity measures that are known as the fiscal cliff? And we should just call it what it is. The program that they're going to push on the working class in general is austerity. They want to ramp up the austerity to the levels of what we are seeing in Europe right now. The U.S. hasn't been at that level, but they're moving quickly to that level, and it's permanent. It's not just these cutbacks, or what they tell people is that, we all have to tighten the belt, and we all have to share, we have to sort of share the burden of this crisis, and we're all in it together. If we're all in it together, we all see what happened with Hostess, right? They're saying that because of the unions and the demands of the workers, that it's no longer profitable. Well, they increased, the CEO, his pay was increased 300%. So we're not all sharing the burden. We see the people at the top, that their income has grown, and they've got a greater share of the wealth in this country. We're not all sharing the burden. Wall Street got a blank check. And the government, the capitalist state went to them, you just tell us how much you need. We'll sign our name to it, and you write in the amount. And that's exactly what they did. And what did we get? We got more repression and oppression. We got cutbacks to all the vital social needs that we won through struggle. That's what we got. And it's more coming down the pipe. So we have to begin to fashion a program of struggle and fight back. And simply put, I think that people are arriving at the conclusion every day, even though we just come through this latest cycle of elections, and unfortunately people sort of went in there and they closed their eyes and they pulled a lever, and that's okay. That's all right. If people wanted to vote for Obama, that's okay. I understand it, especially if you're an oppressed person, and with all the racism that was in the mainstream media against, the masses of people, and calling him a welfare president, things of that nature. I understand where that comes from. But we have to get people to understand that once you pull that lever, the fundamental contradictions in society continue to exist. They don't go away by pulling a lever. They go away by fighting and fighting in the streets and struggling. That's how we can combat the contradictions of society. But we have to begin, if Occupy Wall Street showed us anything, that we have to begin to fight and struggle in a different way than before. You see, if we take a lesson from Greece, they've had about 12 general strikes in Greece. They've shut the entire system down over and over again. And it has not pushed back. You see, Greece has its own ruling class, but they're subordinate to the to the interests of the imperialistic ruling class in the more predominant parts of Europe, like Germany, France, Italy, and the U.S. So their economy has been taken over by what they call the triumvirate, the three main banking interests in Europe. And they haven't been able to stop this austerity program, even though they've waged a very vibrant struggle in the streets and they fought with the cops. So what does that tell us is going to happen here in the seat, the most powerful country in the history of the world, the predominant imperialist power on the planet today? What do we say to the working class? What do we say to the most oppressed people in this society? First, we have to stand on one of the founding principles of the party, and we have to support the struggles in the oppressed communities, be they in the Latino community, the Black community, or the indigenous nations.
That's right.
And we have to say to the general white working class that we only go so far as the least of us is lifted. That's how we judge ourselves and how far we've come. And if you can understand that, I don't know if I can help you, to be honest with you. Maybe you're not too far gone, but you might almost be at that point. We have to revisit that principle if you don't understand that. Just go read Lenin. You don't have to go to the founding members of the party. Go read Lenin and his position on the national question if you don't understand that. Don't take it from me, but take it from the words of, the Marxist canon, and go to the stores, go to Lenin, and you'll find it. Go to Amilcar Cabral, and go to Sam Marcy, the founder of the party. Comrades, I think, we've been talking about, I have 2 minutes left. So we have been, I want to get to the perspective of power and of struggling for power. You see, like I said, I would tell people before the elections, they would ask me why I would vote, and I didn't vote. I didn't vote in 2008. And I wanted to vote for my mother who had passed because she wasn't able to see that event. But I had to think of the Palestinian people, and my conscience couldn't take me to that place to vote for that brother. As long as he's going to go to AIPAC and he's going to vow to continue their war of aggression support their war of aggression against the Palestinian people, I ain't got nothing for you, man. And I ain't going to pull no lever with your name attached to it. I can't do that. But no matter what lever you pulled and what name you selected, at the end of the day, the only way that we're going to win freedom in this society, the only way that we're going to actually build equality in this society, the only way that we're going to build a society based off of solidarity and not off of profit, is to begin to struggle for power. And that's why we have been talking about people's power assemblies. And that's why we've been pushing this perspective of people's power assemblies. What we mean is that it's very evident, it's very clear to a lot of people, and they're waking up to the fact day by day that the representatives that they have chosen to represent them don't represent them, and in fact represent the interests of this decadent U.S. imperialistic ruling class. Right. It is clear that these people, if they want to give a blank check to the financial, the speculators, to the ruling class, and they want to tell you that we need to cut back on your important social needs, and that we want to privatize Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid, that they don't care about you. They want to maintain the status quo. That is what the government is there for. The government itself arises on a certain reality, definite relations that exist within this society. And it is to uphold that society, and they use their state, if there's ever people on the streets, to maintain that status quo. They will send the cops after you to break up strikes and people mobilize in the streets to fight for their needs. So we have to begin to erect and build a new power that represents our interests, to circumvent. It's not that you don't have some brothers and sisters on a city council sometimes that are fighting the struggle. We had a brother here who's been fighting valiantly, Charles Barron, and he continues to do so. But it's an uphill battle, and everybody else on that city council is aligned against him, because it ain't set up for him to win. It ain't set up for us to win. It's set up for us to fail. So we have to elect a new power. We have to show people and build confidence and empower them in their ability to struggle and fight. And we have to say to them simply that if you have a next door neighbor and they have been paying on a house for 30 or 40 years, and that the sheriff shows up at their door and say that the bank has foreclosed on you, it's time for you to go, and they're prepared to move everything out of the house, that the only way that you can stop that from happening is you can join with that neighbor of yours and you take over that home. That's right. Say it. If you have a school in your neighborhood that's getting ready to close because the city says they no longer have the money to keep it open, Then you join with the teachers and the students and the family members, and you say, we will not let you close and foreclose on these children's education. If you have a victim of police brutality and they've been ignored by the city council and the so-called independent review boards that are erected in the city, if they aren't independent, they're tied to the cops, and they have cops sitting on the boards a lot of times, retired cops, and they want to fight for justice, and they find that nobody in the so-called halls of justice are paying any attention to them. You erect the type of organization that is designed for them to be able to go to and help them raise struggle. That's what they've done in Baltimore. And over time, comrades, over time, people will begin, this builds confidence in people, not just in their individual ability to struggle, but in their neighbors and in the organization itself. And it becomes the seat of power. It becomes the place that people go to. It becomes the social, place for people to actually go and fellowship with their next door neighbors, and it becomes the only organization that fights and struggles to defend their interests. We need this level of organization. It is time for us to begin to make it very clear to people that things will only going to get worse. And the only way that we can stop them from getting worse, the only way that we can win the society that all of us hope and dream, not just for ourselves, but for our children, our grandchildren, and children that we don't know, not just here, but around the world. The only way that we can do that is to overthrow this brutal system, and the only way that we can get our class, the oppressed people in our general class, to that is to begin to make it very plain to people that we need to have confidence in our ability, and that we need to actually take power within our hands. We start there. We start making it very clear to them, and we actually start organizing in the streets. We take to the streets, and we build the type of organization. And as soon as we get to that point, at our local levels, at the street level, at the neighborhood and the block level, we take it to the seat of power in this country. We take it to Washington, D.C., and we erect the dream of Dr. King. And we go there and we shut Washington, D.C. down, and we refuse to leave until all our demands are met. And the reality is that they're not prepared to meet our demands. So people will arrive at that you have to get people to the conclusion that we have to actually take over the entire society. But they have to get there through struggle. And once they go and they see that Washington not only is not prepared to meet their needs, but is not capable of meeting their needs, then they'll arrive at that point that a new society is necessary and it is possible, and they will see that it's possible because of the struggle and because that they've been in the streets. So I've exceeded my time, and I apologize for that. And I will leave you with this: all power to the people, build Workers' World Party.